Hi everybody, Brienne here from Pixite, and today I'm going to be coloring a floral piece from Keisha Becerra. She is a featured artist of ours and she has released a new book with us. So this is going to be her new book and it's completely floral inspired. And I'm just going to be kind of showing how I get texture with things or how I kind of can make a realistic flower. This is a grayscale book. I've chose to do sunflowers and there's a rose here too, but it's mainly sunflower. There's sunflower here, sunflower there. So that's what I'm going to be coloring today. I kind of made a palette here of colors that I thought I would be using. I picked out a couple reds for the rose. I'm going to keep the rose a traditional red color. And then I have some oranges, yellows, and browns for the sunflower. Now, I do use pencil quite a bit when I do florals, but we're gonna see how this goes today because I've done some research on sunflowers and they're very smooth texture looking. I've looked through lots of pictures. When they're more ripe and the seeds are coming out, they're more brown in the center, and when the center's growing, it's more of like an orangey, yellowy type color. Sunflowers are just amazing that they have those seeds, you know, like it's just so cool how they make those. So anyway, let's get started on this picture that we have today. I'm not really too worried about my background, but I'm just gonna because it's very small, it's like right in the corners. That's pretty much my background, maybe a little bit over here. So I'm just gonna put some color in there for now, probably just like a blue or something. So I'm just gonna outsource that blue from my palette that I made here. And then we can always adjust it later if needed be, but it's not gonna be a huge saving grace in this picture because it's a very small background. So I'm just gonna put some blue back here. I'm not gonna worry about getting in the lines or whatever. Not a big deal. Just lighten it up there. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really super worried about the background because it's a very small background. I just wanted to have some color. I'm not worried about coloring over my lines because I'm going to be going over all of this shortly. So as long as I just get a little bit of color in here. I'm trying to do contrasting colors because I'm planning on doing the red and the yellows and all that stuff. So just trying to contrast up the colors a bit here. See, it's just in the corners where I really have a background to color here. Not too worried about it. It's such a small area, so I can always come back and make minor adjustments if I need to. So that's really all I'm going to do for now with the background. So I'm going to go back to my flowers palette that I made for this tutorial. Oh wait, there's some background there too, eh? Hold on a sec here. Just want to make sure I get it all, because I don't want to need to go fill those small little areas in after I'm done coloring the flowers. I just want to get it out of the way and then I can feel more free to color the piece and not worry about the background. So if I can just get all the spaces, those little spaces. It's hard to tell sometimes with grayscale or any picture really before it's colored, and then as you go, oh, I missed this, oh, I missed that. Okay, I think I got them all. I don't think I missed anything. If I did, it's quite negligible and we'll be able to fix it easily. So let's start off by coloring the sunflowers. So I'm going to, I think I'm actually going to color them in orange first, and then I'm going to layer with a yellow after. Possibly maybe just orange around more of the middle, and then I'll do the yellow towards the outer edge. I have a picture here right in front of me because I just wanted a little bit of inspiration for this. So maybe I will start off with the yellow actually. I'll start off with the yellow. This all has to be freehand colored, so whatever you're most comfortable using, you can use technical pen, you can use marker, whatever you are the most comfortable using. For small areas, I really do find the technical pen is best. You just have to make sure that your opacity is all the way up, so you're getting proper coverage. It's a lot more accurate for these small little areas than the airbrushes. So I think I'm gonna color the initial piece in with my technical pen, and then I'll come back in with the airbrush to blend in some orange and brown colors in here. So when you're filling your piece, you can adjust if you want to make the most of filling it easiest or fastest, because you can't just fill with the fill button like you do with line art. So you can just adjust your brush size, you bring it all the way up, and you can fill in a huge area. You just got to make sure that you don't do that, because like there's a space there, so just keep an eye on where your spaces are. But yeah, you can totally fill in huge areas and then just go around the edges with your brush on a smaller size, and this will save you time, but you still have to be accurate when you're doing the edges, right? So I'm actually just gonna get that color kind of spread out all over here where I know I'm gonna want it. And then I can just go around the edges very easily. Also, if you're might want to take your pencil off the screen once in a while, because if you make a mistake and hit the back button, you're going to lose it all and have to do it all over again. I've done that before where I've colored a whole piece and then made a mistake, and then I'm like, I have to do it over. I've done it more than once. Definitely done it more than once. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and just kind of do my edges. It's very important that you leave your opacity all the way up for full coverage, otherwise you're going to get lighter streaky areas, and we want full coverage right now. Well, it depends on what look that you're going for, but I'm trying to kind of recreate a more realistic floral. So I'm putting my base color down, which is going to be my yellow, a brighter yellow. And then I'm going to add the details after. That's usually the process in which I do grayscale. It's usually the process on actually which I color anything, whether it's line art or grayscale, is to lay down the colors that your most dominant colors as first, or darkest if you're going for a shaded look, whatever look you're going for. Lay down your colors, and then you go back in after and add all the details. And I rotate my canvas a lot for the most comfortable way to color. You just have to make sure that you're not dragging your hand across the screen. because it'll leave lines. So just monitor your work, and if you do drag your finger on accident, just press the back button and make another attempt at it. Pretty sure those are leaves, so we'll leave those. I think this is sunflower too, so we'll just color this other part of the sunflower as well, now that I'm close up and you can kind of see. Because there's two sunflowers overlapping, and then there's the rose off in the corner there. I've always loved sunflowers. I always thought they were so beautiful, and it's so interesting how they grow so tall too. They're such a tall, beautiful, dominant, bright flower. And that's what I've always kind of liked about them. Always reaching for the sun. That's probably where the name sunflower came from. So I'm gonna have to color, it's gonna be a little bit different coloring the one in the corner, but I do wanna get all my yellow down so I can kinda, so my next step I can see what I want to do from there. Now I think that this might be a rose in behind, I'm not sure. Rose or leaves, we'll decide. Probably a rose. So we're just finishing up filling in the sunflower here. Almost done. The filling is always just kind of feels like procedure to me. And then the texture and the details are what I really truly love to do. Just filling in the color really is just kind of part of the process that I have to do in my mind, which is still fun, like it's relaxing and whatever, but the most fun for me is really getting to the details. That's where I really start to have fun. So I've talked about this before in different grayscale portraits, so you kind of want to work smart and think about how you're going to be layering this picture. Really, I probably should have done these roses and stuff first, but they're so small. I'm just going to get around it after because I really don't want to color those first, to be honest. I would like to color the sunflowers first, so that's what I'm going to do. And then I can go around with the technical pen after and fill in the flowers and add details to those guys. Okay, maybe I'll just color that yellow for, I don't really like it being there like a space, so I'll just use it as yellows overlapping leaves. Okay, so we got our flowers, our sunflowers filled in. Now what? Well, I'm going to grab a bright orange and I'm going to go to my airbrush tool and I'm just going to kind of kiss this around the center. A couple different oranges, just kind of layer it. You can even just do the whole center if you want. It's going to be brown anyway. So I'm just going to kind of reach it out in spots so that it kind of flows into the sunflower with the airbrush. Sunflower is actually probably going to be one of the more simpler flowers to color, only because it's a limited color palette and you don't really have to add a whole lot of texture to the sunflower. It's pretty, I mean, you can, yeah, you totally can, but you don't have to. The leaves are very, very smooth. But if you want to add texture, it would probably help add a little bit more realism to your sunflower. And that being kind of touched on, I'm going to go and I'm going to outsource a color here. I'm thinking of stuff as I'm going. And there's a really great color that I'm going to outsource in a minute from the Pigment palettes. I use this palette so much for so many things. The neon palette is what I'm gonna go grab they have like a neon orangey kind of color in there, and I think it would go really great with this right now. Just going to kind of color there, kind of get this one going over here too. It's just gonna look kind of messy right now. Don't be put off by that. I mean, I'm gonna add a little bit of shading too to add some depth, which I'm kind of doing now with the orange. But if you want to add a little bit more shading, you have to go a little bit darker, which I'm kind of going to do with the brown. So right now I'm just kind of getting these colors blended a little bit. It might actually still take me a while to do this flower. It depends on how in depth I want to go with the details. I do want a detailed flower and I do want it to look realistic, so I'm just gonna take it slow here and see what kind of happens. Airbrush is really good for naturally kind of blending colors together. You don't want to press too hard with it. All the sunflowers that I kind of looked at were also in the sun on a very bright day, so of course the leaves are gonna look smooth with less shading. But if this wasn't directly in the sun, then it would have more shading to its leaves, right? And you can kind of see the little hints of shades and folds in the leaves, how her lines are drawn. So go with those and they'll always help you kind of know exactly where your shading is going to look the best. Okay, now I'm going to go grab that orange we were talking about here. Oh, I went too far. Slow it down a bit. There we go. So this is like a ready type. I can never recreate it when I try to, so I always end up just going back to it. It's like a ready type of orange, and I just think it's perfect for this. An easy way to make a brown is if you have an orange, just go to the other end of the spectrum with the orange like this, and you'll get a nice kind of deep brown. Now I think I'm going to grab my pencil. I can always blur things together and make them smooth after if I don't like the texture, but I do want to just kind of give a little bit of color variation with the pencil because it has like almost like a natural texture when you brush it on gently. So that's all I'm going to do right now, is just kind of brush it in areas that I've added some shading and some color, and then perhaps blend it or blur it. I want the shading to be very natural. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and just, even if you don't want to make your own palette and you want a good palette for sunflowers or flowers in general, the neon palette, now that I'm thinking about it, would actually be really great. Right now I'm using the oranges and I'm using the yellows in this palette, and they're working nicely. I'm just adding texture, and like I said, I might take away some of the texture. We'll see as I go here. But the leaves were looking a little bit, even though they're smooth in pictures, I do want a little bit more detail on them. You can always use a picture for reference, but it doesn't mean you have to do it exactly like the picture. Lots of times I just honestly use the picture for kind of figuring out what colors I want to use. And then I kind of just go with my own direction with it. And I don't really use pictures very often. If I haven't colored something, or I don't have a lot of experience with something, but I still want to color it, try something new, then sometimes I'll look, get some inspiration. Now I'm just going to do some outward kind of lines with this bright orangey color that I took from the neon. I'm just going to do a little bit of outward lines with it. A little bit too dark there. Gonna lighten up this yellow here. Add a little bit of highlights to some of the tips. I use the pencil a lot for foliage and flowers. Might have mentioned that before. And also what's great about that is you can achieve some amazing results with free tools, because this is a free tool for all users, which I've also mentioned before. So don't be bummed out if you don't have some of the other tools. You can still do a lot of really great stuff with pencil tool. And then if you get premium at some point, then you can play around with the other tools, which are also great. I'm not gonna downgrade them. They're awesome, awesome tools. But I'm just trying to show that you can make art and not have premium. So I'm just gonna, before I neglect this flower too much here, I'm just gonna go over and do kind of the same technique I did with the other one, the pencil tool. I did add some highlighting, but I don't have a heck of a lot of shading over here, so just want to add a little bit more shading. Especially with the overlapping flower here. And don't be shy to play with your brush size and your opacity when you're using any tool, because you will achieve different looks based on the size and the opacity of the brush. And of course, how hard you press down. That's why I usually press light. And then if I want more color coverage, I go back. I don't usually start off pressing hard in areas. And think about when you're shading, like how flower is layered. Like if it's layered over top, then there probably would be some shading. Like in here, like I just did. Adding some more shading. So just a little bit of a process to get the depth that you want out of a flower. If I would have left it flat, like it doesn't look flat in the picture, don't get me wrong, there is shading. But for drawing of this being this close up, really think there should be more than just flat colored leaves. There should be depth, shading, highlighting, and that's what we're doing right now. So this is the fun part. This is the part I like doing. This is the part that I find is the most fun, is going through and getting those realistic details working on your flower or on your portrait or on your animal, whatever you are doing. So I'm going over this whole flower and adding more shading, because as I'm going, I'm finding the shading is really what is bringing this flower to life and what is really adding the depth that I'm looking for, and the highlighting as well is helping. So I'm going around and fixing both of those things up right now. Also, don't be shy to play around with your opacity to get deeper shading. I wouldn't put it all the way up at this stage, but definitely if you want deeper shades. And usually your deeper shades are usually, not all the time, but in this case, they're going to be a little bit thinner lines because you're going to layer your shading. And usually your lightest highlights will also be thin lines, like that. Because it's a layer, it's a layering effect. So you don't want to lose the look of all the work you did underneath. So you just do a smaller line in the colors to kind of achieve, as you see I'm doing right now. I'm using a smaller line now on a higher opacity than I was. It's still low, but it's higher than it was. And I like it being a little bit lower because then I have more control, because you can still get that, even on low opacity, you can still get a higher or darker look, I should say, when you press down a little bit more firm. Sometimes I find if you're just on high opacity from the beginning when you're doing intricate work like this, it's too much. So there, I'm getting this nice kind of shading around my flower, and I still got more to do. It takes a while. That's why I kind of like to keep on just going around and around the flower, because it's so easy to miss petals or miss spots. And I just adjusted my brush again to get an even deeper shade in some spots with a smaller line. It's all about layering those shades. So I'm just going around the edge of the leaves where I want a deeper shade and just drawing a line close to the natural line that she drew to layer my shade. Because if you look, I have a very broad shade here. Now I'm tightening it up and adding a little bit more depth by doing a smaller line in certain places. Keep on neglecting this flower over here, so I'm gonna go kind of add a little bit of those things over here now. Probably gonna blur a little bit, like this stuff going around the edge of the flower. I might come in and see what the blur tool can add. And this is all going to be brown in here. So we can use the pencil tool to kind of get it started. Now I'm kind of stuck with the neon palette, but that's okay. I can always go back to my one I made if I need to. So with the center, I'm thinking, I'm gonna go to my airbrush for a second here. So with the center, I do believe I will be using the blur for the center of the sunflower. So I'm just kind of mixing and blending brown, yellow, and orange together to kind of make a sunflower center. If you want, you can also take the technical pen, put on a little bit of a lower brush size, probably bring down the opacity a touch here, and maybe even a bit more. And you can go around and kind of add these dots. I'm just going around and doing them on different colors and different brush sizes and opacities. And then I'm going to go back to, you know what, I'm gonna try my paintbrush tool here for a second. Also a free tool, might I add. I'm just going to shade with this guy a little bit. I just want like a painterly kind of look here. And I like the way it kind of outreaches and adds easy, quick texture. Deepen it up again. Okay, now I'm just gonna try something. I don't know if I'm gonna keep it, but I wanna try it. So I'm on my blur now. Just going in to add a little bit of I'm just trying to blend it out a little bit more in certain areas. And then go to blur. I did use some of lose those the dotted looks I did, but not a big deal. And I'm just blurring towards the base. I don't think I'm going to bring it all the way out, or not the base, but the center of the sunflower. And then I might go back and just kind of add some dots here. So I'm using the technical pen and dotting dots with the yellow, and I'm changing the color from light to bright yellow, and I'm using the brush on different opacities and brush sizes, and it kind of makes like pollinated look. For the flower, and it just kind of adds a little bit of extra detail, and you can't go wrong with having details. So actually brush size down, opacity up, and then go around and do littler dots in certain areas and just be random with it, and you'll get a cool effect. Want the bright yellow, opacity, brush size. And then you're just gonna get this kind of cool look for your flower. It's gonna look like real, or somewhat like real pollen anyways. See, I'm not worried too much about the shapes that she used on the inside. I'm just kind of using the shades and my own colors to make my own inside effect. And you can dab the brown too. And kind of the more that you do in different variations systematically, you'll start to get this unique look to your flower. So I'm liking the way that the sunflower is looking. I think it's looking pretty good so far. I need to do the inner part of that sunflower over there as well. So I'm just gonna go back to my pencil tool. I'm just adding some more shading where I think I want it a little bit deeper still. I'm actually going to grab my blur tool and I'm going to blur some of the shading in these areas. And I'm going to blur some of the highlighted areas I did too. I'm not going to blur it all. Just going to blur it a bit in some areas here. Okay, so one sunflower I think is pretty much close to done there. Now I got to do the inside of this other one. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use my recently used colors, and I'm just going to go to my airbrush. I'm not going to fuss with it as much as I did the center one, but I am going to still add the same details. So I'm just going to get it in there quickly with the airbrush. And then I'm going to go to my paintbrush. I'll lighten it up a bit there, a bit here. Doesn't need to be as detailed as this one because it's open, but we're still going to do somewhat of the same stuff. So I'm going to go to my technical pen. And I'm just gonna do what I did over here, and I'm just gonna add dots. Probably keep it a lot more simpler, just because even the angle that this is on, it wouldn't be the same. So I'm just doing the exact same thing with the dots, kind of systematically trying to blend them and get a very it looks good because over here is more straight on, so this would be more shaded over here. So I can actually go ahead and just color this area in a little bit more right here. Maybe not there, it's too much. Definitely in that one corner is okay. Just kind of add some random kind of dots like I did over there, kind of coming outward. Let me just grab my blur for a second here. Just kind of get in here. Kind of just blur maybe the outside of these dots. A little bit of the lighter ones, maybe blur. Okay, and I think that's pretty good for the sunflowers. I do need to get those leaves down here, so let me just grab some greens. I guess I could use those and go to my technical pen. Make sure the opacity is all the way up. Kind of a nice sunflower color green, and you can also, if you're noticing mistakes or anything, you can also take the time to kind of touch those up. You sometimes will go to the lines, especially when you're doing a lot of shading and detail. So if you want to fix it and make it look almost perfect, you can. I'm not too worried about it though. I'm actually going to leave this over here because I'm going to do some more shading, I think. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna probably do like a vignette type look on the flower, on this floral page when it's done. And I'm just gonna go to my pencil tool and deepen up this green and just kind of get a little bit of shading in here. A little bit of highlighting. And I'm going to grab my blur. Okay, now let's paint our rose after I get these few little spots that I think should be blurred. Okay, so let's get these roses now. Now in behind here, I'm struggling with if this is leaves or I might even just leave it and do. I just want to try something here. No, I don't like that. Okay, so we're gonna color it. And I'm just trying to think. Leaves or flowers? And I'm gonna go with leaves on this one. So I'm gonna actually just color them in green like I did down there. Thinking about doing like a vignette, but it just doesn't look right. If I'm gonna do a vignette, I still have to color these and get the color in there, because just trying to cover over it works sometimes if you're gonna do it anyway. But in this particular case, it doesn't. So we're just gonna color it in. I'm just touching up some areas there that I'm noticing I missed. You always will notice that with grayscale when you go to color something in close up like this, you'll notice that you've missed areas or colored an area wrong sometimes. So I just usually touch those up as I go along. I find that's the easiest way. And the only reason I'm not coloring this like a flower, because I don't know if it is a flower the way that it is, and I think it would just be easier to do leaves. I'll cut, this is going to be a flower here obviously, but all around it, I'm just going to color them like leaves. And then I can do a vignette on it if I want to when I have the color there. And it won't look so forced or off looking like it did when I just tried to do it. Yeah, I'm starting to think that they are leaves anyway, so. Okay, that looks good. I'm actually going to shade it and just kind of get it out of the way. So I'm gonna grab my pencils. Remember, I always lay down my color first and then I add my details after. So I'm just going to get in some of these little pencils. Good for that too, because you can press really lightly and just kind of sneak it in tight spaces without pressing hard and making it look kind of off. I didn't really need to color around this rose all perfect because I didn't color it yet, but I did. I'm just gonna shade in these areas, and I don't care if the shading's perfect because I'm gonna blur it, to be honest. So if it's a little bit scraggly looking, it's not gonna upset me too much. And this is why it's good to think about how your picture is being colored in layers, because stuff like this, coloring around stuff, is very, very time consuming. This is just a small area, so that's why I'm just talking about like bigger areas. It can be very, very time consuming. So it's a really good idea to kind of plan out your picture and how you're gonna layer those colors in there. And then I'm just gonna sweep this across a couple areas near the ends. Just to get a little bit of highlight in there. Here, there. I've shaded a little bit more in some of these fold lines. I'm actually using the roller rink greens for this. If anyone wasn't sure or didn't notice. So there, I used the pencil just to add a little bit of highlighting and detail and shading. Give a little bit of shape to the leaves. I'm pretty convinced now that after coloring them that they are leaves. Okay. So now, time to bring out the blur tool. And then you can just kind of blur these highlights and shades. Very easily. Then you get like that kind of cool look. Okay, so now let's do this beautiful red rose that we've been talking about. I'm just gonna forget about that palette I made because I'm just gonna use the vintage sweater because I ended up using the neon for that, and I always plan to use my palettes and whatever, not a big deal. Excuse me. I do end up using them down the line for other things too, so it's not, if I don't use it all, it's just fun to make a palette sometimes. I make it with the intention and then I get started and then plan's gonna go haywire from there. I really love, the reason why I'm using the vintage sweater reds is because I really, really love these reds. I use them for roses, I use them for lips. I use them for like a lot of things. Like it's my go-to reds. I know there's a reds palette, but I honestly just really, really love these reds. And I think that they're perfect. It's perfect for roses or beautiful, like glamorous red lips on a portrait. I have my favorite colors that I use in Pigment, and I try to recreate them like I always, like I have so many palettes that I made, and I do use my palettes, I do. But I just, sometimes I just like, when it comes to reds or certain things, it's just, I go back to the same ones sometimes because I just know how beautiful they come out. Anyways, this is from the vintage sweater palette, and I'm using the reds in there for this rose. And I colored every single thing in today with the technical pen. The technical pen will definitely be your friend when it comes to grayscale. It's sharp, it has precision, and you can get in these little areas without making mistakes, and that is exactly what we want. Now, you might want to zoom up on certain things because it can be hard to make straight lines, but honestly it will be your best friend when it comes to grayscale and just laying down your color. Like, you know, when you go to fill something, when you're doing line art, same idea, but you're using your technical pen and doing it manually. And it's like I told you, you can make the brush size bigger to color an area quicker and then just go around the edges. It'll be your best friend. If you want to get familiar with it, it's pretty cool. And you can do a lot of little details, like I did the center of the sunflower with the technical pen. So it's great for fine details. It has those sharp edges that you want. It's clean. See, if you want to make a straight line, zoom in. Easiest way. So there, my rose is filled in. Okay. And I'm going to deepen up that color, and I'm going to go to my airbrush. And I'm just going to kind of very subtly kind of add the deeper red in some nooks and crannies. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but try to keep it within a certain, don't just like blot it everywhere. Just try to keep it in some of the creases, going outward, maybe near the edges for some shading. There is one red that I always use from the reds palette, and it's the bright red that's in there. I use that to highlight with these reds actually. So I'll use this, I'll deepen up the red, I'll use it to lay down the color, and then I'll go to the reds palette and I'll grab that really bright red and use it to add some highlights. I'm just shading in some areas. I don't think I'm going to use the pencil when it comes to the rose. I might, but the rose should actually be very simple. Okay, now I'm going to go to that red. That's the bright red I was talking about. And I'm just going to put it around some of these rims of the rose here with the airbrush tool. I have it on, I think, 1 right now. I just put it on 1 brush size. And I'm not using the technical pen for this because I want a blended look. I'm not looking for precision here. I'm looking for more of a blended look. And the airbrush kind of naturally blends. So I hit the eraser button, double tapped or did something anyway. Hey, it's the first time I did it today, so not too bad. Usually I'm hitting that thing all the time. So just adding highlights to the rim of the rose, because you really want the shape of the rose to stand out. You don't want to lose those petals completely, right? You want there to be some shape here. And that's all I'm doing. And then you can, after you get your lighter red kind of down, you can go to some areas and add a little bit more. Add a little bit more to certain areas and just kind of get, okay, this I didn't mean to do, whatever this is over here. Get rid of that. And just go to certain areas on a little bit of a bigger brush size. I might have to adjust it a couple of times to get it right. I'm just going to add a little bit more. With that red in spots. And I'll use the deeper red and add a little bit deeper shading as well in spots. And by going with lighter highlights and deeper shades in areas, that is the whole trick to creating depth, is shades and highlights and layering them and blending them. And all your clues to where your shades are going to be are right in front of you. All the creases, all these creases here. And then your highlights you sometimes have to figure out for yourself, but it's usually not too hard to figure out. I just want to try something here with this neon color that we had from over there that we used in the sunflower. Just to get a little bit more of a pinky color in the rose. Now I just actually used pink. Using pink for highlighting. Which you wouldn't think to use, sometimes anyway. In this case, and I'm just kind of blending the red and the pink together. And I like that. I think it looks really good actually. So I'm going to just take my blur out for a second. I just want to see how it will look if I blur it. Yeah. Don't mind that at all. Now, I might just add a couple of light highlights. I want to see how it looks. Kind of blended the other ones out, but I was thinking blending those ones out, the blur, and then just adding a couple really light pink ones and seeing how that looks. I'm just blending out the shading a little bit in some spots. Finding some spots it's a little too dark. And go to our white. What I'm doing is layering those light pink highlights, so it almost gives, I'm doing it on a very small brush size and very sparsely and high opacity, and I'm just going through the rows and adding these nice little white highlights kind of sporadically for this little bit of shine, a little bit of shine and light. If you notice I'm kind of zooming in and out pretty fast, it's because I'm in the zone right now and I'm just feeling these highlights. And I think our rose is looking pretty good. Now, I'm just gonna touch up some areas. I think I'm gonna skip out of doing the framing or what I was going to do with the black there. I'm not doing that anymore, I don't think. I'm pretty happy with the way that it's looking, so I don't need to. Not that I needed to before either, I just thought it might look nice, giving it a framed look. So I'm just kind of touching up a couple spots here. And I might even add a little bit of white to the sunflower. Let's try it out. Oh, I made a mistake here. Good thing. Good thing I noticed. See, that's from zooming in and out. Probably dragged my hand right through. But if I don't go over my picture, I don't notice it till later. So, but easy fix when you do notice it. I'm just adding some highlights places. A little bit of added shading in some places. I'm using the black. I don't always recommend using black. It's very dark and can leave harsh, but if you've already layered your highlights and you're looking at your piece, you can use black, but I would use it sparingly. It does add a nice effect sometimes, so it can make your piece, add to your piece, I should say. Go to my browns. Adding a bit more depth in some spots. Go to the blur. You can blur it out a little bit. Blur this dark area a bit. Airbrush, add a couple more white highlights. The shading a little bit more. And there you have it. I'm pretty happy with this. I think it looks nice. I'm glad that it turned out halfway decent, because I've actually never colored sunflowers before. This is a first for me. I wanted to take it on as a challenge. I'm just touching up my edges. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I think that it really did turn out nice for a first time on sunflowers. And I've colored roses lots, so the rose was not a big surprise, but really happy about these sunflowers. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. This is Brianne from Pixite, and we will see you again next time.